Hey everyone, how's it going? My name's Logan Kilpatrick. I'm on the Google DeepMind team. Welcome back to Release Notes. Today we're joined by Tulsi Doshi, who's the product lead for actually more than just Gemini models. All models now inside of
our Gen AI
models inside of DeepMind, and Josh Woodward, who leads product for AI Studio, Gemini app, and Google Labs, so the whole suite of DeepMind's and actually more than DeepMind's product services. Tulsi, Josh, we're sitting here because of Gemini 3.0, and we're sort of entering the Gemini 3 era. Do you want to give us the sort of high level of the exciting headlines for this model launch?
Yeah, we're super excited about this model launch. So we're releasing Gemini 3 Preview. We're releasing it in a wide range of surfaces, and Josh can talk more about what that looks like. But I think the reason we're doing that is because we're seeing this model really be this step change in terms of what you can do with it and what you can build. And so a couple of things that we're really excited about. I mean, one, the model is just state of the art when you think about reasoning and its depth and its nuance, its ability to kind of take simple prompts and actually turn that into extremely rich outputs. So that's, I think, one starting point. Its multimodal understanding is also incredible. So I think one of the things I'm really excited about is its video understanding, its image understanding, its ability to actually go deeper between the context of your text and the images, and then combine that with its abilities in coding, for example, to actually create just really cool outcomes, I think is awesome, right? That ties then to it's an amazing vibe coding model. It's also our best model yet for agentic use cases and tools and agentic coding. So there's a whole step change we're bringing in that regard. And then I think lastly, one of the things we always look at with Gemini is we're trying to build well-rounded models. So we want to build models that are actually really smart, which this model is, but also models that we think are going to be really good for users in our products. And so this model crosses the 1500 ELO on LM Arena, which I think it's 1501, which is awesome. And
one matters.
That one matters. But I think we use that as kind of a measure of well-roundedness, of the usability, the accessibility of the model from a stylistic standpoint. And I think that's something we're also seeing in some of our testing in the products as well. And so I think the combination of all of those things means this model is going to be really awesome for this tagline we're using, bringing anything to life, because you actually can now take these different modalities and formats and use them to build really cool things.
Yeah, I mean, I think I just add, there's one thing for a model to be awesome on the leaderboards, which this one is, but when you get your hands on it, it's going to be, you're just going to love it.
Feel it.
Yeah, it's really good. We're putting it in the most surfaces we've ever done on day one. So we're going to basically crack of dawn in the morning, get up, put it in the Gemini app. It's going to go into AI mode. That's for all the sort of consumer use cases. Developers will be able to get it at the same time. AI Studio, it's going into Vertex. There's a new sort of coding product we're putting out called Google Anti-Gravity. It'll be there too. So it's just going to be everywhere. And we can't wait for people to try it out, give us feedback.
Yeah.
And I think actually on the where it's going to be everywhere, one of the cool things with Gemini 3 is this time we've actually partnered really closely with a lot of customers externally.
Yep.
So I think this is one of those times where we actually have a lot of partners outside of Google also who are going to be shipping the model tomorrow, and who have been working with us to give us feedback and help us make the model better. And so that's also exciting. It's not just that our products are going to be scaling this model, it's hopefully broadly we're going to be scaling this model, which is really cool.
Yeah, I love the meet the world, meet developers in my world, but meet the world where they are and all these products, and people don't just use Google products, so putting the models out there and getting them in their hands is super important. There's an interesting thread actually on this product story, and we were just talking to Korai before this about sort of the partnership between DeepMind and the PAs and all this stuff, and I'm curious, Tulsi, and actually Josh as well, from a DeepMind collaboration, how much, as we sim ship across the services, the perspective of those products matters more and sort of influences the models. And then also is that a net, is it just harder? Is it more constrained? So does that actually help us in hey, we need this model to be really great for search, and that's pushing us in this dimension, which then, skews the model capability in some positive way that we don't, or is it really just more juggling of all the constraints?
I think it's both things. I mean, I will say, Josh, tell me I'm wrong.
No.
It's been the strongest partnership we've had
Definitely.
in terms of getting a model into the hands of the product, in terms of the feedback loops that we've had with the product teams. Because I think now, you know, we have actually a user base who is using our models regularly that we can get feedback from, that we can run live experiments, that we can actually, you know, solicit feedback from. And that is actually really huge, right? Because then we can bring that feedback back into the model. And I think you're right, like there are constraints, right? So the kinds of things that developers are looking for may not be the same things that are important for the app, which are also not necessarily the same things that are important for AI mode. And so it is a bit of a tension game we're playing between all of these moving pieces. And I think that's hard from a model side. But actually, like, as a PM and as someone who's like trying to think about this holistically, it's awesome because we're now getting the feedback to be able to actually have real conversations about those trade-offs, right? To be able to say, okay, the model is now going to do this really well, but at this cost, are we okay with that? And what are the trade-offs? And I think that's been really good. And I think this time around, we've had a bunch of hard conversations, actually.
I don't know if we can share any of them, but like, is there a specific, like I was in a code.
Ooh, I've got one.
Okay, yeah, I like
so some of the viewers may have seen, we've been testing this model kind of in the wild, silently. And
Sometimes not so silent.
Sometimes not
so silent. Yeah, go to Canvas and it's just there one morning. That was a mistake. But you kind of in an early rev of the model, what we were really interested in kind of trying to optimize some aspects of the persona. And I remember there was one rev that we really liked on that one dimension, but it regressed on a whole bunch of other dimensions. And so that'd be an example where we've got really positive feedback, but like Tulsi said, we're trying to make this a well-rounded model. And so if it's great personality, but it's like forgets how to do tool calls, for example, you can't ship that. Yeah. So these are kind of revs to revs that we look at together. And I would say, I think one of the things we're really excited for people to try it out is because I think we're now getting the product model feedback loops working really well.
Yeah.
And so when people are giving feedback in any of these products, it's now just like seamlessly starting to like flow back in. And that's really exciting too, because you can see the quality gains happen when we do these kind of blind tests side by side.
Yeah.
And it's kind of awesome because even something like, we say tool use as like a broad phrase, but even the way that tools are being used in the Gemini app is a very different construct than like how a developer might use tools in a very different context or product, or like how anti-gravity expects tool use to work. Yeah. And so I think now that we actually have these different product surfaces that we're getting feedback from, we're actually able to see those differences and those trade-offs. And I think that also allows us to actually have a much more holistic understanding of what do we mean when we say tool use, or what do we mean when we say code performance, or what do we mean when we say, you know, creative writing abilities or something like that.
Yeah, I feel like the product scaffolding sort of grounds a bunch of those capability conversations in a way that is like really, you have to like proxy with some of the academic benchmarks, which are oftentimes like actually not representative of how users actually use the models in certain cases, which is tough. But, and you both alluded to this, I'm curious when, and this was sort of, you know, I get all the tweets of why are we not shipping Gemini 3 earlier, which I'm gonna start just sending them to you two. And sort of, and like, I think it gets at a broader conversation of like when, obviously Gemini 3 is out the door now at the time of this conversation being released, but like when was the moment where we knew like, hey, this is the model we want to get out the door? And obviously we've been doing tons of this iteration, but yeah, is there a way we can ship faster? Is there, why not ship earlier? Like in the past, we've done all these like crazy experimental checkpoints, which we've gotten tons of feedback, both positive and negative in a lot of cases. So I'm curious what the balance.
The calculus was there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we do want to ship fast. And I think that's actually super important to keep alive. Like, I think this whole idea of relentless shipping, put things in the hands of users as soon as possible, get feedback as soon as possible. I think that we want that to continue to be the theme.
Yeah.
And I think we want that to be the theme across all of our models, not even just like Gemini Pro, for example. I think in terms of this model in particular, one of the things we really wanted to focus on was its kind of real world usability. So real world usability, both in our products, but also with developers. And that means actually getting a lot of feedback and actually iterating on that feedback. And so we spent, you know, a period of time putting the model in the product. To Josh's point about the persona discussion we had, we put the model in the hands of customers. And then we basically used that to also help us calibrate, okay, where is the model meeting our expectations, where like it matches what we are seeing internally? Where is the model not necessarily meeting those expectations, and how might we want to adapt it? And so we had kind of quality goals and bars for ourselves that we wanted to meet on our benchmarks, but also on like how it would work in the products, what kinds of, experiences we wanted to create with the model. And so it was all kind of working towards that. I still think the goal is like ship it as soon as possible within the constraints of that realm of things. But it's about like making sure that it hits those goals. And I think now from the previous models we've set, we're actually setting more complex goals for ourselves. Yeah. So every time we release one of these models, we're setting the bar higher for ourselves. That also means that meeting that bar is harder, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing I would add, I feel like the speed is great, because when a model comes, we measure it in like days and hours until it's actually ready. So I guess we could get to minutes. Maybe that's the goal. But I mean, I think some of the turnaround on this is just amazing. And the teams working across either the developer side or the consumer app side, the modeling side, obviously, it really is, you're seeing, I think, out in the world, the momentum, like the compounding. And so I think it'll get faster. But at this point, we're kind of like days, hours, and maybe we go to hours, minutes. That's the next jump.
For both of you, what was that moment, and Josh, maybe you start with this one, that like you tried one of the Gemini 3 checkpoints and sort of, the use case or the demo that clicked? Was there any of them that like you sort of saw this and you're like, this is clearly a step change? And I'm happy to give mine as well.
Yeah, we should go around. I mean, I've had a few of these.
Yeah.
I think this model's really good at vibe coding. It's very good at web dev. And you can just describe something that's in your head, hit a button, and it's there. And that is kind of a crazy sort of compression of time and skill and expertise. So that was one. I'm really excited about the multimodal capabilities too. We're doing some stuff. We're kind of both on the Gemini side and the Google Labs side. We're really caught up in this idea of how you can transform content. And this model's very good at that, better than I've ever seen. So those would be two off the top of my head.
What are some examples of the transforming content piece? Like, is this,
Yeah, I mean, say you're a student, you've got a whole bunch of like video lectures, handwritten notes, any of that, you just load it in, hit a button, it goes. Anything around, like, I'm very excited about also kind of visual formats. We're starting to play around a lot with that. There's a experimental feature we're putting in the Gemini app where it'll literally, you can sort of describe something, it'll make an interactive website for you on the fly.
That's crazy.
And
so, that's not Canvas though?
It's kind of built its own little thing.
Got it.
And I think to me, that's a whole new frontier with these models. We're calling it generative interfaces on the team. But this idea that just pixels are streamed in as they're ready based on your prompt. And I think that's a whole leap. We've never been able to do that before. So that's now possible. Still a little slow right now. That's why we have it as a labs feature. But I hope people will play around with it a lot, because we're doing experiments where it's like, give like the history of Van Gogh's life by period with example artwork, and it'll just build a whole timeline and just let you go through it.
That's crazy.
And it's all just generated. Pretty amazing.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
Tulsi?
3 examples from my side. One is, I do think the vibe coding piece really does hit. And I think it does because the visuals are so rich and the interactivity is so rich. And so I was using it literally to create like a fun game to play with my niece. With like a single prompt, what you can get, her ability to actually engage with it. I think that kind of fidelity of the experience we haven't been able to see before, and that I think really hits home.
You're using AI Studio?
I'm using AI Studio. Fear not. The second one, though, that I think is really interesting is actually one of the things we don't talk as much about with this model is its multilinguality is also really good. So its ability to write in like Hindi or actually in Gujarati, which is like not as common a language, but is like from the western part of India, which is what my family speaks. That is also really strong. And I think that was another wow moment for me, which is like, oh, this model is really good.
Yeah.
And it's actually able to do something that I personally struggle with, in terms of daily life, that I would actually really love to see kind of play out. And then the third is my husband is a very avid pickleball player. But the like video understanding of the model and its ability to kind of break down a video and like break down a set of moves and actually like give you critical feedback. I think it's like all three of these examples are basically combinations of the model being able to understand something that maybe you by yourself either struggle to do, or it's harder to do, or just requires a lot more focus and attention. And the model is able to pull out some of those nuances and actually like help you with them in a much like richer kind of way.
Yeah.
And I think it's just been awesome. Also, I will say like the vibes of the model, even in terms of like the style in which it responds, it feels different than other models. It feels smart.
Yeah.
And I think that also stands out when you engage with it.
I think the one other thing I would add to, you said it, is like, to me, we're getting at a point in Gemini 3 where it's like the combination of a lot of these things is really starting to show and differentiate. So like when you go back, Gemini 1, long context, Gemini 2, more modalities, some of the coding started to come in, 2.5, even more coding. Now we're kind of in like agent tool use. It's all starting to kind of almost like ladder and sort of build on itself. And I think that's what we're starting to feel, at least I'm feeling on the team, is like there aren't these little isolated model features anymore. It's actually like the combination that starts to get really interesting. And I think we saw this even with Nano Banana a few months ago, where you kind of take something as like put it together. So to me, this is like Gemini 3 gives us a huge foundation of sort of things we can combine in new ways. And that's where you get like multimodal and vibe coding. Suddenly you've got some really interesting interactive thing that just before wasn't really possible or that easy to do.
Or there was this cool demo someone on the team built, and I think we're actually using it in the materials, where they took a picture of a handwritten recipe in Korean and then turned it into like a full vibe coded like family recipe app in English with the measurements where you could adapt them for like different
switch.
You could switch. And like, again, that's a great example of like the combination of like, it has strong multilingual capabilities. It has strong multimodal understanding. So you can literally take a picture of a handwritten recipe in Korean. You can then get a fully fledged like interactive app on the other side that you can actually use in your day-to-day life. Like that combination of things is really cool.
Yeah. I feel like this gives so much credence to the bring anything to life narrative for Gemini. I'm like, maybe that's the Gemini long-term. Like, do we have a Gemini model slogan? Like, I know there's a Gemini app, like the 3 Ps and all the research to reality stuff.
You're talking to the person.
But do we have one? Because maybe we should adopt right now. Bring anything to life is the new Gemini.
The new. We are. I mean, for Gemini 3, I think that is, for all practical purposes, the slogan.
And I think what's cool is you talk about that example with the recipes and handwritten in Korean and everything. In some ways, it's mind-blowing, but in other ways, it's like, yeah, this is how it should work. Think about kind of the boundaries and sort of human-computer interaction. I think Gemini 3 like blurs those even more in a way we've never done before, which is cool.
Yeah.
What was yours?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. Mine was, Josh, we were in Arizona and I spent like all day making demos with 2.5 Pro. And I was like, gosh, 2.5 Pro is such a good model. And then I was like, wait, I should probably try these with the new checkpoints. And then it was just like, I was like, okay, this thing's incredible. Like, especially like, it was like very front and center in my mind. Like this was the limitation of 2.5. There was these cases where and then I could just like see automatically. And then I had a interaction where I was DMing with someone and they were like, hey, try to make this random game. And it was like a RPG sort of like fishing game. And it just like one-shotted it. And then I went and, Demis worked on some of the original Sim roller coaster type, no, not roller coaster, but like Sim City 1984 or something like that, sort of tried to remake a game like that. And it just worked using one of the earlier checkpoints. And then again, with some of the most recent checkpoint. And it blows my mind. I think the video game example feels so pertinent because there's so many people who like learned, it feels top of mind for me because there's so many people who tried to learn computer science with the end goal of like building games because it's just fun interactive thing, and like building games actually sucks and it's not fun in a lot of cases. And I feel like Gemini 3 has this power to like help people bring the thing that they want to life.
You know what's actually awesome is we used Gemini 3. So YouTube has this notion of playables, right? Where you can go to YouTube and play a game. And we actually used Gemini 3. Well, by we, I mean Dishin, who's awesome and does incredible things. He actually used Gemini 3 to build a bunch of YouTube playables that we actually are going live on Tuesday with the model. And they're awesome and they're like so fun to play. And I think like just the idea that you can create this like vast set of creators who can actually build these types of interactive experiences is really awesome. But yeah, I think it was after your Arizona trip where you pinged me and you were like, we got to ship this.
We got to ship this.
It's awesome.
But it felt like it. I think if you spend time with the models all the time, like it's just so clear that 3.0 is, or 3 is just a step change. So it's exciting. Did the SVG art people influence our decision on which checkpoints to use?
Well, actually,
Fan animation.
Yeah.
well, actually, it's really funny because we did, after seeing some of that feedback come through, we legitimately, like maybe a week or two ago, like sat down and had a bunch of people try across our different checkpoints SVG art, just because we were like, is it really that different checkpoint to checkpoint? Like, are we really seeing one checkpoint be like so much better at this than another based on kind of the Twitter feedback?
Yeah. Is there a good benchmark for SVG art? No?
Not really, no. But I think the other thing is like it is a very narrow sliver of how the model operates, right? And I think what's interesting is also, one, whether something is cool from an SVG art perspective is like very much up to some interpretation, right? Two, I think what we found is that some are really good at certain types of things, and then others are like other checkpoints are really good at other things, but it's not like universal, like all SVG art, one is really good and then the other one was really not good kind of thing. So it was very like mixed feedback in terms of what we were also getting from people.
I had to go do a bunch of research to learn more about SVG art because people were showing some of the demos and I was like, I had no idea that SVGs could move. I was like, they're like showing like fully animated sequences, and I was like, I thought SVGs were just static images, but they're like the programmatic representation of them, which is also the thing that is most surprising to me is like, I get that it's like I assume it's like the underlying code capability that as it improves, it sort of pushes sort of SVG ability, but then you look at what is actually being outputted, and it's like the SVG representation is actually just a bunch of like random numbers and letters, which I'm like is crazy that the model is actually able to like pick up and learn. Like I can kind of intuitively understand how the model learns to code because it's English basically and a representation of this structured thinking. But maybe
I mean, this is kind of two in some ways, right? It's just more, I think like it also reflects the model's ability to like reason about how something will manifest in 2 dimensions.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's able to actually take the concept, right? So like, oh, I want to generate a span and I want it to look realistic and things like that. And then actually translate that into those numbers and letters, right? That actually will reflect the colors and the points in like an X and Y axis.
The buttons to turn it up and down, right? Like make it fully interactive. It's cool.
It is cool. Are there any other examples of like things that we saw from our internal tests, our external testing that like sort of we all of a sudden we're like, hey, we actually maybe do want to track that because that would be an interesting use case that I think the SVGR was one of those, and I'm trying to, like, the voxel stuff has been around for a while.
Voxel stuff, yeah.
It's cool.
I'm trying to think.
We've been tracking a lot on the app side, a lot. There's not an official benchmark for this either, but like emoji usage, how concise our model is. So sometimes we've been a long-winded Gemini model. You'll notice with 3 that we're like much tighter. It tends to be, it picks up on the subtleties, sort of the way it writes. So there's a whole set of kind of persona style, kind of house style things that we've definitely been monitoring with the various checkpoints that that viewers have probably been seeing out there. So that's definitely something we've been looking at.
Yeah,
it's also been interesting because persona and like style is so subjective. And so that's one where I think feedback actually really does make a huge difference, because my perspective on what good persona is probably very different than both of yours in terms of like what I want to interact with, right? And so I think that's one that like really stands out. But that one we were also tracking even before like social feedback, right? It's one that we were kind of really trying to monitor ourselves and kind of keep a pulse on. Games is something we knew was exciting, to your point. Like we knew that like games is a rich thing that you can build. But I think when you put these models out and you start to see what people do, you start to really see the magic of what people
And the
can
range.
create and the range of what people can create. And then that, I think, inspires a set of like demos, but it also inspires a set of like just people to go start exploring and building something. And I think that also is like a really nice feedback loop too.
Yeah, I have a meta question, which is, I think the last time all three of us were sitting down for this type of, we need to sit down more and do these more often, but was I/O a few, like, you know,
Yeah,
back
6
in
months
May.
6 months ago, which is crazy. And to see, like, it is very, my like meta step back take is like, it's just crazy how the model capabilities continue to improve, and it just like dwarfs, like it just makes like 2.5, when 2.5 launched, like, you know, it had its challenges, and hopefully we addressed a bunch of the things that people had feedback on and sort of built on the things that people really liked about 2.5. But 3.0 just makes it look so, it's like, it makes it look like a goofy toy example, and it's just kind of weird. And I'm curious like how both of you think about that as you take a step back, but also like, you know, when we make the next, like, it's just crazy to me to project forward, like we'll make another step change that will make this model now that we're sitting here so impressed by, and hopefully everyone else is impressed by, feel like kind of a goofy toy in you know, 6 months or something like that.
Yeah, no pressure.
No pressure, no pressure.
I mean, I think about this a lot. People talk about AI time and how like 6 months of normal time translated to AI time thing. But it is crazy. When we were out like outside Shoreline Amphitheater chatting like this,
Yeah.
and it was a very good model. It still is a very good model. It's like, you know, incredibly 2.5 Pro is like incredible. And here we are. It's like every week we're shipping, you know, so in some ways that's why it probably does feel like forever ago.
Yeah.
I think it's also interesting because like we were talking about this too, is it puts actually more, pressure is not the right word because that like sounds negative, I think, but it puts more intentionality on like the model product story together.
Yeah.
Because like as you have these models that can do cooler and cooler and cooler things, yeah, you can talk about that through the benchmarks, and you know, we obviously want the developer community to explore things, and they will come up with amazing use cases as always. But it also puts, I think, a lot of pressure on us to come up with like how can we really take advantage of the strengths of this model to really build amazing things for users. And it's interesting coming from like, you know, you typically talk about you want to start with where the user is and the user's needs and then work backwards to build a product. You obviously still want to do that. You still want to focus on where users can get a lot of value, but you also want to start from what the model can do and what kind of unique capabilities it has, and then what can that empower for users.
Yeah, both ways.
Both ways.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think like, that was actually an easier conversation to have when the models were a little less capable, because the range of what they could do was smaller. And so they kind of fit into your like, okay, yeah, these are like clearly things we want to build.
Yeah.
And now I think it's also pushing for more creativity of like, okay, now that the model has this range, what can you build?
Yeah.
Josh, that's a great, we talked about vibe coding stuff, but like
Yeah.
there's a bunch of new, it's not just, you know, Gemini 3 sticking it into the existing Gemini app. Like there's a bunch of new product stuff. So maybe we actually talk about that as this through line.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few things coming I'm excited about. One, across Gemini and search AI mode, there's going to be a whole wave of kind of generative interfaces, generative UI.
And just to clarify, how is this different for folks who have like seen vibe coding stuff? Is that similar? So like the model is generating code and then there's like function calling behind the scenes, or can you give like a little bit more detail of like the user who hasn't seen this before? How does it work? What should they expect?
Yeah, so the shift we're starting to see, and this is really the frontier, the beginning of it, is in the past, some engineer here in the building would have coded the UI. It would have been one way for all users until it got changed. And what we're seeing now with Gemini 3 is it can actually make a lot of those design and implementation choices on its own. It's a big shift. So you may do a query like, hey, I'm planning an upcoming trip, give me a 3-day itinerary. You know, up until Gemini 3, we would have responded with a wall of text with some pictures. Now the model is going to respond, obviously more concise like we talked about, but it's also going to lay out the page. And so at a practical level, sometimes we do that where it's actually saying, here's a tool call, give me this tool that's going to lay out a, I don't know, carousel I can scroll through. Other times what it's going to do is actually almost act like a design agent and be like, I'm going to go through a design process and think about what's the best way to present a 3-day trip to Rome. And so it may lay out a table, it may give you kind of something that almost looks like a magazine style layout.
Yeah.
And all of this, we're kind of experimenting right now, like how much can we sort of trust the model to lay this stuff out? So it's super cool because you're giving the model widgets, a style sheet, different tools it can use, and you're kind of saying, go wild, model. And so I think for a lot of people, what they're going to feel is, oh, this is a much more visual, kind of immersive, interactive, but also kind of customized to me sort of view. And I think that's what's exciting, is like it's just the beginning of that. And so I think if we look ahead throughout the Gemini 3 series, as well as 3.5 and beyond, this idea of the models being able to kind of compose more and more things feels like an interesting theme to kind of explore.
It's also like, you know, Josh mentioned widgets. Like I have this like particularly fun example for myself, at least, on AI mode, which is, you know, if you ask in AI mode with Gemini 3 about bubble sort, right? Which is like just a very sort of standard notion of how you can sort, you know, elements in a series. It actually creates this like interactive widget that like you can play with and see like how things actually get ordered and how bubble sort works.
The real question is, why were you Googling how to,
Yeah.
how to do bubble sort?
Real question.
You're preparing for like a coding interview somewhere, or like show us how bubbles sort.
No, but I think the reason it's fun is because I like have this just like, it's, you know, credit to Madhvi, who is, you know, one of our coworkers who was showing me this example.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's kind of a blast from the past, because if you remember, like when you were learning about these things, you're learning about them from like static like textbooks, right? And you're trying to like take the written notation and like map it and be like, okay, like let me try to visualize it, like let me try to write it out, like okay, now it makes sense, versus being able to actually see it and play with it and reflect on that in the context of how you search. Like it really feels like we're bringing the Google mission to life, you know, the like make information, what is it, universally accessible and useful.
Yeah.
Like it's that kind of.
Gemini 3 brings the Google mission to life. Not only, but even the Google mission is coming to life. That's awesome. Josh, other things, Gen UI in AI overview or in AI mode and the Gemini app, other things in Gemini app?
We're also trying to explore some new features around how Gemini can act as an agent for you. Yes. So you've seen probably over the last month or so, we've put out a new API for computer use, which is really cool. Yeah. This Gemini 3 model takes it kind of one level even beyond how we think about multi-step actions, being able to kind of take sort of different tool calls and just do stuff for you. So the Gemini app's going to have an agent kind of experimental feature. It's interesting. You can go in and say things like, create to-do lists out of everything in my inbox, if you're behind like me on my inbox, and it'll sort of give you this bird's eye view and be like, let you add stuff directly to Google Calendar.
What's been your personal feel? Like I have a very high bar for this inbox use case, and what's your sense is like it's working and it's hitting it out of the park, or like what's the, where should my expectation be for how good it is at doing some of these box tasks?
I think you should give it a try, see what you think. I think that one is actually approaching, like it's starting to get pretty useful for tasks, I would say. The other one we're seeing a lot is kind of helping people do research across a lot of disparate things. So you could do this kind of through a deep research path and get a report. Or you can try this agent and it'll actually start trying to do things for you. And if it's not sure, it'll actually pause and say, hey, Logan, before I send this message or before I click this buy button, do you want me to do this? So I think that'll roll out to all of our Ultra Plan members on launch day, which we're excited, and we'll kind of take it from there as we go. It builds on a lot of the stuff we've worked on together, going all the way back to Project Mariner. Almost a year ago. That was some of our first forays into this. And there's still a ways to go, but we're really excited. This is one where we're really excited to see the feedback.
Is that how the inbox one is working as well? It's like actually like it's like actuating a browser and it's doing, or is that like using a bunch of like tool use to send requests to like the Gmail API or whatever?
It's more that. Okay. Yeah, so in this case, if you go into Gemini and connect Gmail, which a lot of people do, it'll start doing kind of tool use and API calls in the background. And then Gemini 3 kind of oversees that and kind of orchestrates it for you. So there'll be a lot there, I think, that's like exciting to keep exploring as we kind of push forward ahead too.
Yeah, I love that. Any proactivity stuff? I know just we talked about personal and powerful implicitly so far, but is there anything like on the horizon from a proactivity standpoint, which is this is my #1 feature request. If I can get the Gemini app to just look at my email for me and look at and see all the tasks I need to be doing, that would be my ideal case, because I don't want, it's just too stressful to look at all my
Overwhelming.
emails. I'm like, I already have chats and
I
text
have a
messages.
shared pain here. I guess I'd say watch this space.
Okay.
Yeah, we're very interested in this. Right now, we're starting to see a lot of people use kind of scheduled actions in Gemini as kind of a proactive way to engage. But we think there's a lot to do here. And I think some of the things we've talked about, combining different modalities, letting people hook up different Google apps, kind of bring some of that together to orchestrate. Stay tuned.
I'm excited. I will be staying tuned. I love when people say, watch this space, because I'm like, where? Where do I watch this space?
Gemini.google.com.
Gemini.google.com. Perfect. It feels like one of the big constraints of like actually bringing the model and letting the world experience how it can bring anything to life is like we need crazy amounts of compute because the demand is so, it's not even like we don't have lots of compute, it's just the demand curve is like this, but you know, you can't build physical compute that fast in 6 months. So I'm curious, like for the Gemini app and maybe more broadly across other products in your scope, like how are you thinking about the balance from also from a user perspective of like where we're allocating compute, because we think there's value for different use cases?
Yeah, it's super hard. I would say like we could share some of our stories like the Friday before launch. I mean, I don't know what's harder, solving AGI or solving the puzzle of compute and trying to like, but I think like what makes it hard, and you hit on this, Logan, is like there's just demand everywhere. And so that's one thing. Well, I think we're making products now that people want. And they are coming back to them and using them. I mean, even just in the Gemini app, our daily requests has tripled in the last quarter.
That's crazy.
And I know we've seen similar stuff on AI Studio, and developers are just like, so when you're streaming that many tokens, you really have to try to think through it. I mean, one of the things we spent a lot of time up here on Friday was like trying to think about, okay, where are the places where a lot of people can experience kind of the great stuff in Gemini 3? So there's going to be some consumer apps, there's going to be some developer stuff, there's going to be some customers. And so we try to think about that. Then we try to get very creative. There's a great kind of tool that came out of Google Labs called Flow. It helps you make sort of videos. And that was one we were like, oh, there's just not enough. And we're like, no, but there has to be, because this product's like, people love this product. And so we were able to find some crazy deal over the weekend where they're going to convert some of their chips to a different kind of TPU to get another TPU freed up. So, you know, you go to all these ways to try to like make it work. And we'll see. It's launch day, so we'll see how well our estimates played out. But we have a crazy Google Sheet where there's
all these estimates,
all kinds of
like moving things around.
Yeah.
I think it's also interesting because one of the conversations we tried to have as a part of this kind of planning exercise is like, okay, what is a P0 experience we really want to ship with the model? What is P1? What is P2? And what's hard is it really does feel like you're comparing apples and oranges, because part of the goal is to create like a wide range of experiences, right? Like Notebook LM is a very different and very compelling product than the Gemini app, which is also a very different product than vibe coding on AI Studio. And so, you know, when you're now sitting down and looking at these products and saying, okay, where should we be bringing Gemini 3 to life? You're talking about very different versions of the products. And you actually like Gemini 3 will manifest in very different ways in these products. And so actually, if you really want to showcase the breadth of what Gemini 3 can do, you actually, you want to ship across that breadth, right? And so then you're like, okay, well, how do I think about like, how do I think about how the math works out across all these things?
And the real problem is we keep making great models across all of these dimensions. And it's like, I do think there's like something really interesting where it's, you know, we had like VO was crushing it. And then it was like, you know, we couldn't get enough compute for VO. And, you know, we made it happen. And then Nano Banana happened. And it was the same thing. It's like, we couldn't get enough compute. There's so much. And then Gemini 3 is happening. It's going to be the same story. And the interesting thing
is there's
like,
only more coming.
And there's only more coming. And it sets this new floor. And I'm like, yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy to think about how much demand there is for this stuff.
Yeah. I mean, this is where all the efficiencies matter so much. There's like an unsung cast of heroes that are making the models, you know, 2, 3, 4 times sort of more efficient. I think the other thing you kind of have to just step back and realize, probably the most consistent way to get good models is to sign up for one of our subscription plans. I know this is not a commercial. This is not a commercial.
Plug.
We do give the highest rate limits, and we really do try to kind of people that are willing to pay are going to get that too.
And if you're a student,
That's the other part. If you're a student today,
geographies.
actually launch day, if you're a university student in the US,
Yeah.
go sign up Google AI Pro for free for a year.
That's awesome.
So that's $20 a month times 12 free.
It's totally worth it, by the way, not just for this model, but because there's just a lot coming for.
Yeah, that's right. You'll get this model. You'll not only get the highest rate limits kind of in Gemini app, you'll get access to Notebook LM, Flow, kind of all the good stuff coming. A lot of our developer products too.
Yeah.
So it's exciting.
It's crazy. It is a good deal. Storage. I mean, now this is just
This is actually be a
sponsored
studio.
by Google AI Pro subscription. That's awesome. Any sort of, obviously we're starting with, which is interesting to sort of, and I don't know if there's a story here, Tulsi, that we can tell, but last December we shipped Flash,
Yeah.
Gemini 2.0 Flash, and it was awesome, and it was a frontier sort of state-of-the-art model. Now we're shipping Gemini 3.0 Pro or 3 Pro, depending who you ask, and
Gemini 3 Pro.
Gemini 3 Pro officially. Obviously people love, Flash is actually what I think made Gemini popular in some sense. It was our workhorse model. We launched 1.5 Flash back at I/O a year plus and a year and a half ago, which I think put Gemini on the map and has sort of pushed the Pareto frontier. When are we working on Gemini 3 Pro, Gemini 3 Flash and all the other models? Do you have a sense of when we get smaller models and
Yeah. This is my turn to say, watch this space. but
which space?
Yeah, including the app.
Yeah.
But actually, I think so. We definitely want to build out the Gemini 3 family. So I think Pro is just the beginning of this, and we're already, I think, very excited about the direction we're going with Flash and where we're going to be with the rest of the Gemini 3 models. I think the reason for sort of shipping them in sequence instead of bundling them all together and trying to ship them all as one package is, one, when you ship one of these models, you get to learn a lot about how people are using them.
Yeah.
And so you get to learn a lot about okay, where is 3 Pro really resonating? Where did we think it was going to resonate versus where are people resonating with it? Where are we seeing people say, hey, actually, this is too expensive for my use case, or it's too slow for my use case, or I might actually need something different, which then influences what you do for Flash, right? Because Flash is meant to be the workhorse model, and we want to make sure we kind of account for those pieces when we're building that. And so I think actually shipping them in sequence kind of allows us to learn from one and build to the other. I think it's also part of the relentless shipping exercise, right? If you want to ship quickly, we want to actually put these models out there and see what people do with them and get feedback. So yeah, but there will be some exciting stuff coming.
Thank you both. This was an awesome conversation. Thank you both for the hard work of pushing to get the model into all the products. I feel like folks are going to enjoy the moment. So hopefully we'll be sitting here for I/O maybe sooner next year and launching other cool models. So thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Enjoy it.
Yeah.
That's going to be great.
And thanks everyone for watching Release Notes. We'll see you in the next episode.